will take subliminal angles of astrology to consider several things that are critical to success across the continent. Again, it will be subliminal astrology. And sometimes when we hear the word astrology, it kind of sounds negative to some brainwashed people. Anyway, we are all brainwashed. It depends on where the brainwashing is coming from or where it came from. Because some people were brainwashed and they are no longer brainwashed. Some people are brainwashed and are still being brainwashed till now. So the interpretation of this context will run into stormy weather with some people, but it still has to be said. Subliminal astrology is what we're going to look at now, if you stay with me for a few minutes. Now, the leaders of African countries, if you can conduct some research to find out whatever you can about the names of their wives, you may not see exactly the role the names play in the events that surround the leadership or the regime of a particular leader. I'm just going to help you a little bit. Look across Africa. Find out which leader or which leaders had a wife or wives called Grace. Does that ring a bell? Do you know of a wife that was called Grace, or that is called Grace, who was a wife to an African leader? So that's just an example. I just want to mention that name. What is in a name? And what role has a name got to play in the events surrounding the regime of a leader? And these things are kind of universal, but I always like to domicile my talk on Africa because they say charity begins at home. So I'm not going to be talking about other frontiers and other worlds. I'm going to talk about my world. My world is African. So what is the role of a name, and what has the name of a leader's wife got to do with the things happening in the regime of that leader? So all these African names, all these African leaders, what are the names of their wives? Of course, we now have some African leaders who are women. We've had women prime minister or women president. So I'm not going to focus on them. I'm just going to focus on the men because the men have occupied so much space. So let me focus on them, at least for now. Those men who lead African countries like prime minister, president, and all that, who are their wives? What are the names of their wives? If their wives don't go by an English name, what is the native name of such a wife? And what is the interpretation of that name? And now look at that very, very well. And then look at what is happening or what happened in the regime of that leader. So I called it subliminal astrology. You can look that up. So it is astrology and it is sublime. Many, if not all, of African, African people. I like to add S to it, like peoples. African peoples if not all, I would say some or many come from climes where astrology is the order of the day. I mean, what is astrology? Look at the sun and say, okay, it's going to rain. Or look at the clouds and say, oh, okay, there's going to be a lot of wind. And all these things, those things are all astrological. So when you look at the subliminal astrology in the context of the names of people, today we're not talking about the names of everybody. We're talking about the names of the wives of the leaders of African countries. Did that in any way influence the regime of that leader? Or for current ones, are the names of their wives influencing their regimes? I just threw up a name, Grace. Who was Grace? Or who is Grace? Was there an African leader, a country president or prime minister? Was there one whose wife was called Grace? I'm not trying to zoom in on any particular person. I'm just going to say, okay, Patience. All right. Charity. Denise. All these names. What are the names of the wives of the African leaders? I mean, prime ministers and presidents. Does the wife's name, not the wife, because people get names because their parents gave them those names. So the thing is, the names follow the people. Your name follows you. You will see that it either plays out directly or indirectly, or it plays out, or let me say opposite or opposite. Some people will have very, very kind names and they will be so wicked. And some individuals will have very wicked names that kind of sound wicked or could even mean, wickedness. But they'll be unbelievably kind. But today we're looking at the names of the wives of the presidents or prime ministers of African countries. What role do those names play in the affairs of their husbands' administration? So we know that we're not going to blame a woman for the name that her parents gave to her. And somebody can say, okay, why don't you talk about the names of the men? Yes, but not today. Today we're talking about the names of the wives, because they always tell us that behind every successful man there's a woman. They don't tell us the reverse of that comment. So that's why we don't want to go into the reverse side of it. We don't want to remove our attention from where we are going, because we have a definite direction today. African names mean a lot, because every African name is a sentence. Africans make sentences when they have children. When a child is born, the parents will make a statement. And that statement they make, a key word in that statement becomes the name the child will use at school and everywhere. But if you dig into it, you will find out the statement that the parents made. So now when your parents give you a name and you grow up with that name and you are female, you grow up into a woman, get married, and things begin to unfold, and somehow your husband becomes the prime minister of the country or president, as the case may be. It may look like he succeeded because he is a man, he worked hard, he campaigned well, he's been a nice guy, and so on, he won. The credit does not go to the woman, because that has been the plight of the woman for ages now. When we look at it from the point of view of subliminal astrology, we will see that some of those successes occur because of not just the woman, but the name of the person that this candidate is marrying. The name that the woman is bearing. The woman who happens to be wife to the guy who is running for office. So some of the regimes turn out to be wonderful. Some of the regimes turn out to be very, very turbulent, stressful. And you see that the prime minister is really not doing anything to create problems, but there are just problems. Subliminal astrology tells us that it's coming from somebody's name. It could be the man's name, it could be the woman's name, but today we're talking about the names of the wives of the prime ministers and presidents of African countries. Because the regime can turn out to be very, very wonderful. Even though the man is wicked, good for nothing, and just, a write-off. But somehow he ran for office and things were just falling in line until that man becomes the prime minister. Why? The name of the woman that guy is marrying. So when you have a wife, you see, the good part is that you cannot choose your wife in preparation for what you don't know. Boy meets girl, boy talk to girl, because that's mostly the case. The boy talks to the girl and the girl says no, and the boy persists and does everything. Flip over somersault and crawl and jump and even walk on all fours. And finally the girl says yes. She becomes a wife. Life begins. The name of the guy or the name of the girl will go to work, which is what we still refer to under subliminal astrology. She keeps going, he keeps going, and phone calls and messages and opportunities and things, good fortune and mishaps and all kinds of things that are happening along the way until life's end. So, but before the end of life, we have seen things that unfold. Success, huge success. Financial success, business success, political success, and social success, and all kinds of things, or abysmal failure, danger, catastrophe, and these things happen. But in subliminal astrology, we know that the name has to do with it. That's why if you look at African names very, very well, you will see that parents take their time to name their girl child. They take their time to name a girl child because they know that based on the culture of the people, the girl should grow into a woman and join a husband along the way. And they do not want to give misfortune to a man. So they will take their time to name their daughter well, so that if anything bad happens, it cannot be traced back to the name of the girl child. So subliminal astrology tells us that we have to pay attention to the names. What is your name? Are you trying to run for office to become a president? What is the name of your wife? And what is your own name? There's something in the name, especially African names. When you look at your name, if you don't pay attention, you may not even know the statement that your parents made. You have to know the statement that your parents made when they had you, because the names, you can see 10 people going by that their native name and the same names on the certificate. But if you approach their parents and they tell you the full sentence that was made at the birth of that child, you see that those names don't even relate in any way. They're completely different. But it's just that key word that appeared on the certificate in the school register, they look alike because the same spellings, the same words, but the sentences that parents made are different. So subliminal astrology tells us that we should be paying attention. When you see an African leader doing well, explore, find out what are the circumstances surrounding his regime. Does his name play a role in it? Does the name of his wife play a role in it? Does his behavior play a role in it? Does his wife's behavior play a role in it? Don't take names for granted. They have a huge role to play. Yeah, forget about education, exposure, experience, mentorship. You grew under the wings of that political juggernaut and all that. Yeah, those things count. But what is your name? What is the name of your wife? Is it affecting anything? Let us pay attention to it, because Africans, if not all, many are from the climes that cannot run away from